On a cold winter morning, the Cyano-Shishensky forest was blanketed in white. A mother snow leopard and her cubs emerged from their den to hunt. Snow fell heavily, and the icy ground made their journey treacherous as they moved along the slippery bank of a stream. Hunger gnawed at them since the previous night, and they hoped to find a fish or small bird to satisfy their empty stomachs. The mother snow leopard walked cautiously, her ears perked and sharp eyes scanning the water. Her cub, however, full of curiosity and innocence, leaped and played along the way, unaware of the dangers her mother instinctively feared. Suddenly, the cub jumped onto a rock dusted with snow, unaware that a layer of cracked ice lay beneath. A sharp crack echoed through the forest as the cub plunged into the icy stream below. The mother turned instantly, roaring in despair as she sprinted toward the water. The cub surfaced briefly, struggling to swim, but the relentless current quickly swept it away. The stream, powerful and merciless, pulled everything in its path. The mother ran along the bank, reaching out desperately, but couldn't save her baby. The cub's piercing cry rang through the forest, a sound so sorrowful that it brought everything to a halt. Snow fell more heavily now, and the mother's cries, carried by the wind, made the moment all the more heartbreaking. The cub began to weaken, its small body bobbing helplessly in the freezing water. The mother watched helplessly, her eyes filled with tears. Meanwhile, Ivan Petrov, a ranger patrolling the reserve in his black coat, was nearby. A lifelong guardian of rare wildlife, Ivan was accustomed to the sounds of the forest. But that morning he heard something different, a faint, continuous cry, as though from an animal in distress. Following the sound, Ivan pushed through snow-covered branches until he saw the frantic mother leopard racing along the stream. Then he spotted the cub, struggling in the current. Without hesitation, Ivan shed his coat and dove into the freezing water. The icy current sliced into him, but he fought through it, his arms reaching for the cub. The cub, eyes clouded with fear and cold, could barely keep its head above water. Ivan pushed forward, stroke after stroke, and with one final effort, grabbed the cub's hind leg, just as it began to sink. The current slammed into him like a hammer, but he held on. Kicking hard toward the bank, Ivan eventually found solid ground and pulled both himself and the cub onto the snowy shore. Gently, he laid the cub on the ground, its fur soaked in purple from the cold. Wrapping the cub in his scarf, Ivan began rubbing its sides, speaking softly in reassurance. The cub's breathing was faint, but slowly its eyes began to flutter open. Ivan worked quickly, pulling a dry cloth from his emergency kit to warm the cub's fragile body. Gradually, the fur dried and warmth returned to the tiny creature. The cub shivered, then looked up at Ivan with a flicker of gratitude in its eyes. Ivan smiled gently, the freezing water still dripping from his hair, unconcerned by the cold. He wrapped the cub in a silver emergency blanket and held it close. On the opposite bank, the mother snow leopard watched, tense and unmoving, her gaze never leaving her child. The cub let out a low growl, weak, but different from the cries of earlier. Ivan whispered, "It's okay, little one. You're saved." Slowly, the mother approached, eyes filled with worry. Ivan stepped back and placed the cub gently in the snow to allow the mother to come closer. She bent down, licking her cub lovingly, cleaning every trace of cold water from its fur. The cub nuzzled into her, safe at last. Ivan watched in silence, arms crossed, heart pounding with emotion. The two snow leopards stood together for a long time, as if the rest of the world had disappeared. Then the mother turned her gaze to Ivan, not with fear or anger, but a silent expression of gratitude. Without a sound, she and her cub disappeared back into the snow-covered forest. Ivan returned to his wooden cabin, changed into dry clothes, lit a fire, and resumed his morning routine of hot tea. The next morning, as the sun rose over the frosty pines, he heard soft footsteps in the snow. Opening the door, he was astonished to see the mother snow leopard and her cubs standing at his porch. The mother carried a hare in her mouth, while the now healthy cub stood proudly beside her. Sunlight gleamed off their white fur as they looked at Ivan without fear. The mother gently placed the hare on the steps and stepped back, watching him. Ivan, heart swelling, stepped forward and picked up the hare, his eyes never leaving the two majestic creatures. The cub reached forward and touched his hand with its nose, as if remembering the warmth he had given it. Ivan stroked the cub's head gently, overwhelmed by the wordless connection they shared. The mother stood still, waiting for his response. Ivan smiled and disappeared into the house, returning moments later with a plate of fresh meat. He placed it on a flat rock nearby and stepped back. The snow leopards approached and began eating, an act of acceptance and trust. Beneath the snowy sky, a rare friendship between human and wild animal had quietly bloomed. From that day forward, Ivan continued to leave food outside each morning. Some days, he found new paw prints in the snow signs that the snow leopards still visited silently. This daily ritual became a bond, a connection deeper than words. In his heart, nothing felt warmer than this quiet, shared life with nature. Ivan never spoke of the incident. He kept it as a treasured memory. For him, the Sayano-Shishensky forest wasn't just a workplace, it was a second home where man and wild could coexist. The mother and her cub remained the most vivid and beautiful part of his life. Not all friendships need words. Sometimes the right action speaks volumes. And in that snowy forest, love and respect between man and nature still lived on, quietly enduring through countless winters. Dear friend, thank you for taking the time to follow the story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to support us.